Now, like I said, you'll understand commanding much more easily when you see it in action. So let us go to a demo straight away. We'll need to do a few things. We'll create a few commands in the view model, and then we'll call these from the view using data binding. I have two buttons here at the top of the screen that are currently not doing anything just yet. So what I need to do is I need to wire them up. Normally, we would do this with an event handler in code behind, but that we're not going to be doing. So what I'll use instead is commands. So let me show you how I can do that. So we're here in the PyOverview view model where I will be creating my commands. In other words, I will write code here that will need to be invoked when I click on my button here in my XAML. I'm not going to write here a click event handler. That's not what we're going to do. Let's use commands instead. So over here in the PyOverview model, I'm going to bring in a command that will be wired up with the add and one with the load button. So I'm going to create a command for each of these buttons. I've named them load command and add command. So the I command is built in. Let's explore this interface. As you can see, this interface is pretty simple. It's part of the System Windows input namespace, and it contains an event can execute changed, a boolean can execute, and most importantly, an execute action. What I'll need to do is I'll need to write a command implementation, and in there I'll write code in the execute. That code will then be invoked when I invoke my command from the view. So let's do that now. So I now need to instantiate my command. I'm going to do that in the constructor to be sure that my commands are created upon the creation of the view model. By the way, the creation of the view model is triggered from here in the view model locator. So here in the constructor, I will now initialize my two commands. While I'm here in the constructor, let me also remove again the code here that loads the pies upon execution of the constructor. I'm going to instantiate my load command to be a new command. And let's bring in Xamarin Forms here. So this command is now getting in as its parameter an action execute. So it's going to be pointing to an action, a method that is going to be executed when I trigger my command in the UI. This is simply going to be a method with return type void, and it needs to be called when I trigger my command from the UI. What am I going to do in here? Well, I'm actually going to take the code that I had here before. And so when I click on the load button, I want to initialize my pies observable collection to contain all the pies in the pie repository. I'm going to do something similar for the add command. I also want to invoke a method, and later on we'll wire this up with navigation to the detail screen to add a new pie. So there we go. At this point, my view model has two commands. Now I need to be able to trigger this code still from the UI. In the UI, let's go to the PyOverview. And in here, I'll now specify that when this button is invoked, when this button is clicked, in other words, I want to execute a command. The built-in command property allows me to use data binding to bind to a command on the view model. The view model is the binding context for the view, so I can now data bind here to the load command. And I will do the same, more or less, for the second button, where I will bind to the add command. There we go. If I run the app now, I will actually load my pies, and I'll also put a breakpoint over here so that we can also see the second command being invoked, because there's nothing else in here yet. Let's run the emulator again and see the result. So now I have my load pies here. I click on that, and that now loads the pies in the list view. So effectively, we've now executed code on the view model when we clicked on the button in the UI. We didn't have to write an event handler for that. We used commands. I can click on this add new pie here, and that will, as you see, invoke the onAdd command here in my view model. Great, we have linked through commands the invocation of code on the view model. Let's do the same for the detail view model. If you remember, this screen will have one save button. Down here at the bottom, I have a save pie button. So I create the corresponding I command, save command. That needs to be the property that I'm going to be data binding to. Again, in the constructor of the detail view model, I'll initialize my command to be a new command. And that's going to invoke my onSaveCommand method here. I don't have any code in here just yet. We'll come back to that. make sure that in the view, we now also specify here that the command will be, again, a data binding, and I'm going to bind to the save command. All right, fantastic. That is all set up. We've now used buttons so far. Let us now go to the overview again. And the next thing I actually want to do is I want to, when I click on an item in this list view, also invoke a command that is then also going to navigate. Let's see how I can do that. Let us write here command. What's happening here? Isn't DLSense not giving me the full list of properties? Well, actually no. There's a problem. Commanding does not exist on all controls. So we have a problem. We're actually stuck because we cannot invoke commands on our view models for anything else because the command property is only available on a very limited set of controls. Are we now stuck? Let's go back to the slides and I'll introduce you to a solution there.